Hey guys, just wanted to do my spoiler review for Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi. So, excuse me. This movie's been out for about a week now. Um, and this film has divided the fans like this is probably one of the most divisive films of the year. It's probably divided the fans as much as this has been like a love it or hate it movie. And it seems like this has even been like a source of controversy even for Mark Hamill, who has actually gone on record as to saying that he said that when he read the script, he actually went up to the director Ryan Johnson, who, if anybody's familiar with, one of the movies, one of his previous works included directing a few episodes of Breaking Bad and also directing the film Looper with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he told Ryan Johnson that he fundamentally disagreed with every decision he made for the character of Luke Skywalker, and that in spite of that, that he was going to give the role, give the role his all, and um help Johnson realize his vision, just for the sake of, just out of respect for him and just for their sake of professionalism. Um, and even said in interviews that it's like he didn't agree with some of the choices Luke made about going to this self-imposed exile for as many years as he did and giving up for as many years as he did. And he said he wasn't completely over it, but he said that at the end of the day, it's just a movie, and that he hopes that people enjoy it in spite of how he felt about it. Some people, and the irony is that it seems like back when Force Awakens came was released 2 years ago, people were complaining about how it was too derivative of the Episode 4 A New Hope, and how it was too formulaic and followed too many of the same beats. I personally I wasn't as bothered as much by it, but I acknowledge the fact that yes, it did follow the same, it did follow a similar structure to it, but at least it didn't have necessarily the same character archetypes. You had like Kylo Ren, who was actually a Darth Vader wannabe and actually wanted to revel in being in the dark side, as opposed to Anakin Skywalker, who was a more kind of who was like slightly more reluctant turning to the dark side. You had the Scavenger, the deserter for the First Order, which is like the new, fills in the void left by the Empire. You had well, I guess you had like the ace pilot. I mean, you had the charismatic ace pilot of Poe Dameron. I mean, I guess you can say Han Solo kind of filled in that role in a sense in the original trilogy, but Poe Dameron, he was more like charismatic ace pilot, and Finn was the defector, and you had Han Solo taking up a mentor role, even though he wasn't force sensitive. But I mean, it wasn't like 100% derivative, but like there was some, but but it's like it did follow some of this. It didn't, like I said, it didn't have the same some of the character archetypes. So I forgave it just because it just felt like it was a throwback to. I didn't mind it. I felt like it was a throwback to what we knew and loved about the franchise, and I enjoyed it for what it was, and just felt like it was just a palate cleanser the audience needed for after the prequels, for being like too different and having to deal with bad dialogue and acting, and just basically feel with, especially with episode 1, we just felt like it was like a 2 hour watching C-SPAN or something, or just forced love stories and all that stuff. And then you also, but then at the same time, it's like people complain, it's like, oh, it's too that movie was too derivative and it didn't take enough chances. And then when this movie came out, it feels like just when it's like it does take chances and goes against a lot, and goes against what you would expect from a Star Wars movie, and against a lot of the tropes and traditions from a Star Wars movie, that now people are hating on this thing for the very thing that they wanted Force Awakens to do 2 years ago, it seems like. and but it's and yet people are praising Rogue One and saying it's one of the better Star Wars movies. That's not something I agree with, because it just felt like, the character, at least like with Last Jedi and Force Awakens, these characters are more fleshed out. They have more fleshed out characters, more people I can get emotionally attached to, as opposed to like maybe like one or two like Jin Urso and K2SO, who are just had more personality and was more animated than any of the human beings in that movie. And Rogue One was kind of take it or leave it, and I just feel like it was kind of overrated, and people were just latching on to anything that was kind of dark or different. And I don't agree with people who said that this was that movie in particular was the best Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back. In my opinion, this was. And I just thought it was a very like more it definitely wasn't to feel like to complete like a kids movie, but I mean there were some moments where it had like the porgs who looked like some like unsettling, disturbing hodgepodge of a rabbit and a gerbil combined, and it had like bird wings and like duck feet, and it was just kind of like, I mean, I get it was like supposed to be, like kid. It was supposed to be sell toys, kind of like the Ewoks back in the days of Return of the Jedi. And, I don't, I'm not as hard. I'm not a, I don't mind the Ewoks. I mean, it's just the thing is, it's like the fact that it was just like the overall like design for the porks was like so like unsettling, and it just felt like the production team, it was like porgs were like of all the alien races they included in this film. This was kind of like at the end of their to-do list in terms of like coming up with a unique design for it. That there was kind of just like, you know what, F it, we're just gonna make it this like weird hodgepodge of like animals you see in everyday life, and just there's kind of like burnt out and low on creative gas. But like other creatures like what was freed on the Casino Planet that that Finn and Rose traveled to find the hacker, and the Vulptices that were on the planet Crate, those were unique designs, those creative, those were like, yeah, I love that, that was fantastic. And the thing is that and I don't know, it just felt like, I guess at first like it wasn't like explained like why. I mean, I know like if you read like it's like the visual dictionary for Star Wars Force Awakens, that the New Republic was kind of like the dominant power, and just like other expanded universe material post the Disney buyout, that that the Empire did eventually fall, especially after the Battle of Jakku, and the New Republic was formed, and they became like the dominant government and became the dominant power in the galaxy. And the First Order were like the remnants of the Empire that was trying to rebuild, and they were kind of like the rebel, like the quote unquote freedom fighters, terrorists, however, whoever you talk, however they were, whoever who were whoever sympathized with them or was against them saw them as, that were trying to like fight and regain power in the galaxy. And I guess after like looking at other source material, that apparently that the Star Killer base, like destroying like the Hosnian system and other capital planets in that were part of the New Republic, that basically the New Republic fell and the resistance was all that remained of it. And the First Order, like they became the dominant power, and which is why the resistance was on the run, and they were being chased down by the First Order, and why they're in a position where they had like hyperspace technology, to track them, and that's how they were following them. And some people thought it's like, oh, that was just kind of like a plot device that kind of shoehorned in just in there, but that actually was mentioned in Rogue One by Jyn Erso when she was infiltrating that base trying to get the plans for the Death Star, that the Empire was developing technology to track ships, use hyperspace tracking, and apparently the First Order finally adapted that and got it to work. And so of course that's what led to Ray and not Ray, Finn and Rose and Poe having to contact Maz and saying they had to go to this casino planet and track down a hacker who'd be able to get them into Snoke's ship and disable the hyperspace tracking technology. And I guess I mean, it did have some take some of the same beats from Empire and Return of the Jedi, especially in the former where you have like the three main heroes, Rey and Finn and Poe going off on their own journeys. And I was shocked by, even though it seemed like it took place some time after for the Force Awakens, the time gap between this movie and Force Awakens was actually very small because at first you have like Poe like leading some attack on I guess like a dreadnought and leaving and like bombing a dreadnought and destroying it. Even though it led to a lot of it led to a lot of casualties, and it was kind of like a Pyrrhic victory to the point where like Leia was so pissed that it's like you should have pulled out. Like a lot of people died. We lost a lot of men and women that we couldn't afford to lose since we're become such a small army at this point that Leia demoted Poe from commander to captain, and because they were being tracked in hyperspace, and there was an attack led by being led by Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, as well as the First Order, in which it was interesting because like at first like he had an opportunity to fire on the main command ship where Leia was on and kill his own mother like he killed Han, but he hesitated at the last second. But then there were other TIE fighters that came in and blew up the ship, and she was sucked out of it, and it killed everybody on board that ship, including Admiral Akbar, who it kind of had an anticlimactic death, but maybe because like the original voice actor had passed away prior to filming, or at least during filming, that's had something to do with it. But at least she was able to use like her. But I was shocked how she was able to. I thought like, oh, because because Carrie Fisher sadly passed away, that the character was getting killed off. But you saw Leia being able to use her force powers to like fly back into a portion of the ship, and she was out in a coma for most of it. You had Laura Dern's character, Admiral Holdo, taking command, and she came into conflict with basically Poe, and saying how they said that they should just they can't go into hyperspace and not burn out their fuel, or else they'll be vulnerable, and the last of resistance will die. And she had this plan to like send deploy like a command pods, or like or not like command ships, but just like the smaller transport ships away from the main command ship, like while they were running out of fuel, and while like other TIE fighters and whatnot were firing on their shields, and it was weakening. Posted that he was being a coward, and which is why he went with Rose and Finn's plan to go to the casino plan to find a hacker to get onto to help disable the hyperspace tracking technology. And while they weren't able to find it, they were able to free those creatures, and they were able to find a hacker who was played by Benicio del Toro, who they didn't say who his name was in the movie. Apparently, the production, I guess he was nicknamed DJ, and he held BB-8 and Rose and Finn, and Rose, whose sister was actually killed, died in the attack on the dreadnought in the beginning of the movie. She had to give up some trinket to DJ as a means of payment, and also used as a conductor to get into the room where the Snoke ship would have like the hyperspace tracker on it, but they eventually got caught. and DJ decided to sell them both out to for a payment and for his own survival, and give away the fact that it turns out that Admiral Holdo, her evacuation plan wasn't just to send like transport ships away from the main command ship just for the sake of fleeing, but there was actually a nearby planet that called Crate, where which was an old rebel base, and that's where they were going to go to hide for the time being. But because DJ gave away that plan, then the First Order started attacking and blowing up those ships, and it led to and that's and actually it led to a conflict in which like Poe was like led to a mutiny that was led by Poe, and then of course like Leia had to wake up and just kind of like settle the whole thing. And I guess the interesting thing is that even though I felt like there was unnecessary miscommunication between I felt like she could have at least, I don't know, I felt like there should have been a reason for there could have been more of a reason for why Holdo wasn't like giving Poe information. Was it because she didn't trust him because of how hot-headed he was, or do you think that they were spies on the ship that monitored or what it was? But I mean, it was kind of interesting that I did appreciate that. I've seen so much of the trope of like this like military maverick, or this like maverick in like this like government position, like say like Jack Bauer or James Bond, where it's kind of like I don't they don't want to abide by the rules. Like, I'm going to do what's right. My instincts are always right, and authority is always wrong. And now they kind of flipped the script and said it's like, oh no, you got to look at the bigger picture, and and not just like go and dive into things like head first, which I thought was kind of interesting, to the point where it's just like, where it would kind of take an approach of like a look before you leap, even to the point where Luke later showed up on Crate, that instead of that he was trying to be, more strategic and, wait, trust that, let him like let things play out, instead of setting all the forces in head first, and like Leia would put a stop, just like not just blow stuff up just to solve the problem, which I thought was kind of an interesting arc. And that's one of the things I appreciated about the movie, and how it kind of flipped the script. And I liked how they gave and I liked how they gave I mean, I know how they were trying to give Finn something to do, just because it's like, I guess people were disappointed about how everybody thought he was supposed to be like a Jedi, and then he turned out he wasn't. And like, I guess I like the theme of like, I guess the idea was to have him was to have like him and Rose like go to this planet and meet up with DJ, and show about how, I guess it was supposed to provide like social commentary about how the gap between the rich and the poor, and things aren't that black and white, but in war, and give a third perspective, in which he reveals to them that both the First Order and the Resistance buy weapons of war from this casino planet. Like, they have like war profiteers who sell to both sides. So it just seems like sometimes the best thing to do is, and so he thinks like the best thing to do is just kind of like, look out for yourself, and take like, and it's about like self-preservation. And I guess that was something he was trying to go for in Star Wars, but it was just felt like, but it was cool. But I just felt like it should have, it did kind of, feel like it was like, I know people say like oh, it was all for nothing. It was kind of filler, but I think it was just to the sake of they were trying to like up the ante, and like up the raise the tension and the stakes, where it's just like they were trying to do everything possible, and their backs were like completely against the they had like their backs completely against the wall, and they were trying everything they could to like fight out the First Order, and things just weren't going in their favor. and even things got worse than even though when they were, and even though I just felt like Admiral Hold or was kind of a one note character, I just like how they mentioned to Leia, it's like, oh, he's like a hot headed one, I like him or something like that, and how it was kind of cool how she made that heroic sacrifice to take the main command ship once everybody was off board, and like use the take it into hyperspace and just fly it into not only Snoke's ship, but not only like damage split his ship in half, but also like at the same time it like took out all the other like dreadnoughts, or I guess like the new like star destroyers at the same time. And the thing is, I really so at least like the character so at least the character was able, and by that sense it saved Rose and Finn, and we got to see this like fight between Finn and Captain Phasma, who, and of course this heroic moment where it took like an ATST by BB-8 took control of that to help turn the tide in Finn's favor, and Captain Phasma had this kind of fell into this like fireball when like the Snoke ship was collapsing, and it was. I mean, the thing is that I know like they're expanding universe. They're like comic books and a novel dedicated directly to Phasma that kind of flesh out her backstory. But I kind of wish that not everybody's gonna have time to go into the just go into the go into her backstory. Go into they could touch a little bit on her backstory. But it was an awesome fight. I liked the relationship between Rose and Finn. I like how they kind of played off each other, and it wasn't like it wasn't, and it was kind of like more. It wasn't like Anakin and Padme. It was kind of more along the lines of say like I guess even like say Han and Leia, or not even Han and Leia, but there was kind of like a mutual attraction for one another, kind of like a mutual attraction, or at least like Rose was pining for Finn, especially since there was like that kiss towards the end, and had to like there's maybe they'll explore a romance towards in the next movie, which I thought was which I thought was cool. But I think the story I liked the most out of all of them was I think was also like Rey's story with Luke when she traveled to that planet and was training with him, and I guess learning about, and also like that forced connection between her and Kylo Ren, where it's like she had nothing but hatred and disgust for Kylo Ren because of how he murdered Han, and but you kind of felt like they both felt like loners, and they were both trying to find like their place in the kind of find their place and kind of forge their own path. With Kylo Ren, the point where Snoke was just looked down upon him, and just saw him as Darth Vader wannabe. He's like, oh, take off that mask. Like it's silly, to the point where even Kylo got so frustrated that he ended up like smashing the mask as a means of trying to like, what, I feel like it's supposed to be symbolic as it's like I'm going to try to be my own man. I'm not going to try to be like Darth Vader, and that's part of it. And or the fact that or this knowing that asking, and there was like kind of cues about from Empire where it's like, oh, you don't know the whole story. It's kind of like Darth Vader was to Luke, was just like, oh, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. I'm really your father. Kylo Ren was like, oh, you don't know the whole story between me and Luke. And Luke, it's kind of one of those like different like those like flashbacks to his stories where it's like it's told from one person's perspective, it's told from a second person's perspective, and then this is what really happened. So first it was just like, oh, Luke said Kylo Ren just like attacked him and was like destroyed the temple that he formed and killed most of his students, at least the ones that didn't become join the Knights of Ren. The There's Kylo Ren who said that, oh, Luke tried to kill him when in his sleep, and so he was defending himself. And then finally, there was Rey finally confronted Luke about the truth, and he said, "Yeah, I actually did try to kill Kylo when he was still Ben Solo, because I looked into his mind and saw how he was so overtaken by the dark side and being tempted by Snoke that he had half a mind to kill Ben, and he ignited his lightsaber, and then but it just but and this is not unlike when he tried to kill Darth Vader when he threatened to corrupt Leia and return the Jedi. Both instances where he realized where he was able to stop himself and take a step back and realize this is no, this isn't right. Like, what am I doing? I'm going about this all. This is horrible. Like, why? What am I doing? But the problem is that Kylo Ren woke up. He already saw Luke with the lightsaber ignited, and it's like he didn't have a chance to. Luke didn't have a chance to explain himself, and Kylo assumed the worst, and that's how he just was fully pushed over to the dark side. That was like the one event that finally pushed him over to the dark side, and why he helped form the Knights of Ren and became Snoke's pupil. And Rey was saying stuff like, you didn't fit, Kyle, Ben's decision had already made up his mind, and I don't know. I guess this is one of the things where that Mark Hamill had a problem with it. I didn't have a problem with it because I would have been more upset if Luke Skywalker had just was gonna actually follow through with it and had every intent to kill Kylo Ren, and instead of just, as opposed to it just being like he had half a mind to do it, and it was just some like fleeting moment. He had this moment of weakness where he realized like, okay, he was being fearful and panicky, and he just made a mistake. But I just felt like it would have felt more out of character if he would have every intent of killing Kylo Ren and had no remorse for it. The fact that he had this moment of weakness, it gave more context as to why back in Force Awakens, when you hear these stories about how he went into the self-imposed exile after the second Jedi Order he formed had fallen, was because of the fact that it's like, oh my god, like, I'm part of the problem. I'm the reason why the galaxy has fallen back in the darkness. Like, everything I did by redeeming Vader, everything I did in for Yoda's sake, for Obi-Wan's sake, try to bring balance, try to redeem my father and help him bring balance to the Force. It was just like he just felt like it was all for naught. Like he felt like I dishonored like what they were trying to do. I dishonored their memories and what they were and the work they were trying to accomplish since the rise of the Empire, or rectify their mistakes. That it's like and that's why he went into this self-imposed exile, and why he was refused to, and also another reason why he refused to help. He became disillusioned. And I like how he kind of like acknowledged something about the prequels, where he just said it's like it was the hubris of the original Jedi Order that led to Darth Sidious rising to power and the Empire rising to power, which is incredibly true. Like, the original Jedi Order felt like they just kind of like sat on their hands. Like, they knew about like a Sith Lord who was becoming a threat to the Republic at the time, but they were just like, oh, we're gonna just sit on our hands, just wait for the other shoe to drop and act accordingly. And then, of course, anybody who watched the prequels know exactly how that played out. And which is nice, like like these there's like a little callbacks to the prequels, also like acknowledging just how the flaws of those movies as well in and out of universe. And on Rey, somebody who's just trying to like goes into, there's also like a there's also has their own like dark side cave where it's like Rey's trying to figure out who her parents are and try to find her place in the universe, where as she's asking for Luke, and he's disappointed how she didn't make much effort to resist the draw of the dark side. But she is pretty a quick study because she does have these like all these visions of like being connected to the forest of like flowers growing and rocks and nature and stuff like that, and but it's also trying to find balance between the light and the dark, and it's because of this connection with Kylo Ren and getting finding out what really happened that she feels like okay, maybe she can end this whole conflict peacefully and maybe redeem Kylo Ren like Luke redeemed Vader. Luke doesn't see it that way. He just wants to live his life as being a farmer and looking after the Jedi text and having this really gross scene where he milked an alien and drank alien goo, and that's when I was saying out loud in the theater, that's no, nope, don't need to see that too much. Don't need to see that. Don't need to see that. I would have rather seen more stuff with the porgs than him just milking an alien who looked like he had breasts looked more like human breasts, more like udders. It's just weird. Anyway, you have finally Rey deciding to go confront Kylo Ren and Snoke on Snoke's flagship. It turns out that Snoke is the one responsible for creating that force connection between Kylo and her, as it means they're trying to find Luke Skywalker. And I guess because he spends so much time, belittling Kylo Ren in that scene, that Kylo Ren uses, Kylo Ren's no longer full of conflict. He already knows who he wants to kill, and when he commands Kylo Ren to kill Rey, he ends up using Rey, which is actually originally Luke and Anakin's blue lightsaber, to cut Snoke in half, and which is kind of cool. I'm like, oh wow, they're actually like the whole scene was kind of similar to Return of the Jedi, but it was like, oh, they're actually going to have like they're fighting back to back and fighting against all these like all these guards, like knocking them down, and it's like you have this one thing where there's this moment where Rey has this kind of like backwards grip with the lightsaber, and like use that technique to like stab somebody in the eye, which is kind of similar to the technique used by Ahsoka Tano and Galen Merrick, Starkiller from the Force Unleashed video games. And you kind of think it's like, oh cool, they're gonna like fight their way out, and it's kind of an interesting twist. But then it's like they kind of flip the script again when you find out that he didn't care about going over to the dark side, or like going over to the light side. He just wanted to overthrow Snoke and be in charge and do something that will exceed the legacy of the Jedi, the Sith, and even the Empire, and asked Rey to join him by his side because he feels a kinship with them, because it's like I feel like that's the parallels they're trying to go for, especially when you find out that, and Rey has to finally admit to herself, and Kylo even points it out, you know the truth about your parents. They're just a couple of like scumbag junkers who sold you off just for drinking money, and who like died in like some unmarked grave or some unmarked part of Jakku. It's like she really came from I was like disappointed because I mean I didn't want her to be connected to like Palpatine or Obi-Wan or Luke, just because I felt like it kind of like the universe doesn't feel as big, and it feels like this universe is like bigger than just the Skywalkers. I mean, yeah, they've been like a pivotal characters in these movies, but it's like everybody keeps acting it's like, oh, it's not about the Skywalkers, I can't get attached to them, but it's like this universe has always been about more than just the Skywalkers. I mean, it's like we've had expanded universe novels like before and after Disney bought Lucasfilm that were about, that focused on characters like, like I mentioned, Starkiller, Ahsoka Tano, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Tarkin, Darth. I think they were like Han Solo. But maybe there was something about like Han Solo, and Rogue One that focused on like Rebel Alliance remember trying to get the Death Star plans. Like, I mean, it's like I don't know why people are acting like this movie, these franchises just about the Skywalkers, and like franchise has never focused on like other supporting characters in this franchise. When it's like we have expand, when it's like it's nothing. This isn't anything new. I'm like I mean, at first I was disappointed, but then I came to appreciate the fact that Ray came from nothing. It makes the fact that it makes her arc that much more significant and makes it that much better that it wasn't she wasn't doing this just because she was trying to fulfill some destiny or live up to some kind of expectation. She was trying to forge her own path, just kind of like she wasn't trying to be in anybody's shadow, live up to a legacy or somebody's expectation, kind of like Kylo Ren isn't trying to live up to any expectation of the Jedi, the Sith, like his biological parents. I mean, granted, it didn't come with any kind of moral development, but I do appreciate the parallels they're going for. That they're just trying to, again, forge their own, be their own, forge their own past, and kind of form their own identity outside of whatever kind of destiny they thought or think that was supposed to be set in front of them, and not trying to live up to, please anybody else. It's just done because like they want to do this. They just feel like they're both respectively doing what's best for the galaxy. And and so that's the one thing is like I appreciated about Ryan Johnston's, what he brought to the table. I mean, yeah, I mean, with the Skywalker, he always felt like everything was about fulfilling some kind of destiny, it, but at least in Ray's case, it makes it well. One, it's like this kind of dynamic. What makes Kylo Ren a more interesting villain, and it also what makes Rey a more altruistic person because it's like she wasn't like Anakin or Luke where she like jumped at the call to become a hero. She was reluctant and saying, she didn't want to be involved in this. She just wanted to stay on Jakku and in hopes that maybe her parents would come back. And then she eventually decided, after Han's death, that she wanted to become a part of this. And then, realizing that, her parents were nobodies and that she came from nothing and that, she's already been like this far into this war that she had to do the right thing and just help out and just do what she can, do what she can and do it for her friend's sake and do it for the sake of the galaxy. Not and it was that was the cool thing about it. And it was even and like she even if she wasn't able to um save Kylo Ren from himself, at least she was able to do that with at least she was able to have some kind of impact on Luke, or at least like I should say, I guess Yoda was able to like kind of talk some sense into Luke, where he came back as a Force ghost, which is kind of cool that they made it was more of a puppet rather than the seat puppet that was more similar to the original trilogy and less like the CGI from prequels. Which at first I thought was kind of jarring, but at first I was kind of like, okay, that's like a nice like homage to the originals, and how he's telling Luke that is like you still like you focus too much on the future and less on the present. You learn more from failure than success, and that the old ways of the Jedi need to die, and that your time has come to become one with the Force and all that stuff. It made for a kind of interesting arc where you realize that, um, yeah, it was kind of true that he focused too much on the future, which is why he had half a mind to kill Kylo Ren and kind of work if he didn't focus so much on assuming that I'm like, oh, he's full of the dark side of stuff and maybe it was a lost cause, that he may have been able to redeem Ben and not maybe push him away. And it's something that he allowed him to realize that to kind of Luke to come out of his funk and travel to Crate when they were trapped in this bunker and they were going to use some battering ram cannon to open the door. And but he came there to make amends with Leia and face off one-on-one with Kylo Ren in a lightsaber duel, even though when they tried to blast him with all the AT-ATs and all the firepower they had. And it was also kind of funny how General Hux was like trying to take command after Snoke's death, but it's like, but he just ended up becoming kind of just being like, it's like kind of like the butt monkey and just kind of just like tossed around, and he had a Kylo Ren exercising his authority, and he had this like lightsaber duel where it was kind of odd because first it was almost like Luke looked more like how he looked in the flashback, where his beard and his hair were like all brown. It was all black, and I was kind of like, when did he have time to color his hair and his beard? And he was using Anakin's lightsaber, even though the lightsaber was torn in half in a fight between Kylo Ren and Rey in where they were both trying to force grab it. It was torn in half after Snoke's death, and but it was kind of this cool where it's like Luke was able to like just dodge all Kylo Ren's attacks, and then he said this line saying, "If you strike me down, I'll always going to be a part of you, just like your father." Kylo Ren goes for the killing blow, and you realize that Luke's not even there. It was just an astral projection of Luke from Crate, where you see him there meditating, and it was just kind of this cool thing where he just realized he basically just humiliated. He just basically completely humiliated his nephew, considering like he wasted all his firepower and energy on like basically a projection. And I love that line where he just said, "I'll see you around, kid." I don't know. I just love that delivery of this line, where it's kind of just like a slap in the face to Kylo Ren, and especially considering like everything he did, and it kind of made sense and explained like why Luke looked the way he did in Kylo Ren's flashbacks and was using Anakin's lightsaber. It was just an astral projection, and you realize on a viewing, it's like when they're walking through on the ground, like there's this red trail it leaves, like Kylo Ren was leaving a trail when he was walking on the grounds of Crate, and Luke wasn't. So I'm like, oh, you kind of feel like, oh, I should have caught on to that. That's pretty good, but and I guess I didn't really explain it, but I guess because of like it took such a strain on his body that Luke's body disappeared like Obi-Wan at the end of A New Hope, and became one with the Force. And like somebody pointed this out to me after the film was over, how he's basically looking at two sons before he passed away, just like how Luke looked at two sons before he went on his journey in A New Hope to be trained to become a Jedi. It was sort of like everything coming full circle, and I felt like it was a great way to set off the character. It was one of Mark Hamill's best performance, and probably my favorite performance of his as Luke Skywalker. And and like how what Luke did actually provided a distraction for Leia and Poe and everybody else to escape through this like this back passageway in the base with a Vulptices to follow them, and then you had Rey who came back and who came to the rescue of the Millennium Falcon, and then she was able to use her force powers to lift the rocks bearing in the exit of the passageway out, and so took the remaining members of the Resistance to flee. And I just thought, I don't know, I just really love this. I mean, flaws and all, like I just really love this movie. It was dark, it was bleak. It pushed the characters to the edge. It gave some development to Luke and Poe and Rey, and it just, I don't know. I just feel like it's probably one of the better. I feel like it's one of the best Star Wars movies in the franchise, and probably, like I said, like this. I'd say it's like the second best one after Empire Strikes Back, just because a couple of characters were kind of one note, and the stuff with Finn and Rose, like I felt like you could have cut that. You could have cut that down a little bit, and I kind of like the blink and you miss an ending for one of those like farmer kids that was working on the Casino Planet. He still kept a resistance ring on on the ring finger, and he was able to like take a brew and move with the Force. And you found out that scene where Yoda destroyed the tree with lightning, that that Rey had actually taken the textbooks from Luke's temple, and I'm assuming that she's going to use it as a guideline to like train herself and become a more proficient Jedi, and whatever Jedi is going to follow afterwards. So, and I'm assuming she's going to. I'm assuming. I mean, my prediction is that there's going to be like a greater time jump of maybe like a year or so between this movie and Episode 9, in which maybe she'll train a new Jedi. She'll probably be training a new Jedi Order, and the Resistance were able to build up their forces and fight. Probably take down the first. Take down the First Order finally. And it seems like there's not going to be a redemption arc for Kylo Ren at this point because he doesn't want a redemption arc. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this movie personally. I would go see it again. I would go see it again. I mean, I think it was not only a good Star Wars, a great Star Wars movie, but also just a great movie, just period. And it's just like I walked out of that movie just feeling like this is the kind of thing like I go to the movies for. This is the kind of thing like I loved what Ryan Johnson did. I mean, it's not a perfect movie, but it's still like one of my favorite films of the year, and that's my consent. That's my final version of the thing. But anyway, guys, how do you feel about it? Did you love it or hate it? Feel it revealed too far from traditions of Star Wars movies? Did you feel like it was done for the best? Did you feel like it kind of elevated the franchise? It was kind of like a mature take that, for the franchise because I mean, it was the theme was about for Kylo Ren and Rey was about letting go of the past and embracing the future. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care. And also, I should be able to, and I should be doing a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reaction video, hopefully tomorrow night, and also possibly a reaction video or a review to the Walking Dead mid-season finale if I have a chance. So stay tuned for that.